Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. Today, I welcome Dinye Hernanda to the Rethink Leadership podcast. She is the expert to call when it comes to building a learning culture that accelerates business growth. Launching her career as an innovation manager in large corporations, Dinye transferred her entrepreneurial and inventive mindset to L&D, particularly thriving in the dynamic environment of hypergrowth startups. Dinye has set up L&D processes and infrastructures in 4 different companies, often taking on multiple roles such as trainer, facilitator, coach, problem solver, you name it. In 2021, she was recognised as one of the 30 under 30 in L&D, affirming her contributions and thought leadership in the field. Dinye has also founded Agile L&D to nurture a community of high-impact, driven L&D professionals. On top of all this, Dinye was named as Mentor of the Year 2023. We discuss her experience with young leaders and tech startups and uncover how leadership is evolving from the ground up for the modern, digitally fueled workplace. This episode is in aid of the Mossy Earth charity, a charity implementing high-impact rewilding projects across a wide range of ecosystems to restore our natural world. Dinye, thanks for joining me for this episode of the Rethink Leadership podcast. Please introduce yourself, the projects and businesses you're involved with, and what won you the 2023 Mentor of the Year award.
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me today. Introducing myself, that's a tricky one sometimes because I'm wearing a couple of hats. But the first hat that I'm wearing, I am a senior learning and development manager at a startup called Hey Jobs. Based in Berlin, we are a company that's providing recruiting solution for different kind of companies. We mostly focus on essential talent here in Europe. So that's where I'm spending most of my time. It's a 400 companies. I am there heading or leading the learning and development initiatives. So that's where I spend most of my time. Other than that, I'm also wearing the head of professional development at Global Indonesian Professional Association. It's an association for Indonesian Diaspora, and there I'm helping them or creating all different kind of initiatives to help career development. And kind of like maybe the third hat that I'm wearing, I'm quite active in the learning and development community. So I do mentor a couple of L&D professionals, L&D leaders that are mostly also based in startups. So that's, I think, the 3 hats that I'm wearing. And then to your question, what got me into Mentor of the Year for 2023? To be honest, that was quite a surprise for myself. I didn't know about this award at all, but I have been mentoring for as long as I remember. I would say I've mentored my younger siblings at home, teaching them all kind of stuff, and I just continued doing that. I mentored refugees and migrants who are finding their way to settle in Germany. I have also mentored, I mentioned before, L&D professionals in different setups. And I also do reverse mentoring, which means I mentor people who are more experienced than me, who are much older than me. These are usually business executives from different corporations here in Germany. So that's where I dabbled with mentoring. And one of the organizations that I work with nominated me for this award, because they thought, hey, who is the person who has spent so much time in mentoring and also has apparently received good feedback from my mentee. So they nominated me. There was a judge committee who accepted all these applications. And then I got called one that I was the Mentor of the Year for 2023, one of the best surprise last year. And that's how I got into it, I guess.
Well, many congratulations. And I know you through an event that we were both at. It's where I met you first. I was just so impressed with the speech that you gave, the passion behind your learning and development, but also you help with the Indonesian diaspora, and of course you work with refugees. It's fascinating. So if I were to summarize some of the things that you do, it's about learning and development, it's about mentorship, it's about career progression, it's about supporting individuals. So why, and that you, and the fact that you work in a startup as well is interesting for me. Why are those aspects of what you do so important for the tech founders and young leaders that you kind of reverse mentor for?
Yes. So the first head and also the first topic that I am heading is this learning and development. So I think previously learning and development is more of a corporate thing. Like you will have this internal academy and you will have a lot of different training catalog that you can sign up for. But lately, so I started as a learning and development lead in startups around 5 years ago. And at that time, in hypergrowth startups, it's usually more about let's just hire so many people, like as many people as possible, and grow as fast as possible. But I think what a lot of tech founders also realized soon is that if you just keep hiring people without giving them some kind of structure to grow their competencies, don't also give them perspective about how they can grow in the organization, then it's tough to retain this talent. And you want them to be there. You want them to not only grow but also innovate. So that's also usually the reason why learning and development is important, because that's where I came in, where I provided some kind of structures or systems so that people can have exchanges and not only, you know, kind of like startup is sometimes people equal startup with chaos. And that's where I came in. It's funny to hear, but I came into startup to bring structure and processes. So that's learning and development for the tech founders. The two different topics like mentorship and career development, I think it comes a lot. It's kind of a part of learning and development. I do it for a different target group. Like I do mentorship for the business executives. For them, um, they sign up for reverse mentoring mostly because they wanted to get to know more about the latest trends, about technological advancement, about what kind of leadership do young people need, like all this kind of thing. Um, and they really appreciate having this one-on-one conversation regularly with someone who is not afraid to voice their opinion, and also frankly criticize them if like, hey, I've watched you lead your team and here are a couple of things how you can get better at it. So they appreciate the frankness and also the space where they can be students. I think it's not common, right, for a business executive to just ask dumb questions and like, I heard about this TikTok thing or like this AI. What is even that about? Or like, how does it affect my work? And it's a nice chance to have this honest conversation and also have just like a regular exchange. And career development for me, because I work a lot with the Indonesian diaspora, refugees. I've experienced it myself. I came to Germany when I was 18, alone, trying to find my way in a totally new country. I'm originally from Indonesia, so a totally different culture. And like career development has always been like kind of a struggle because you don't have the network. You don't know where you can find resources. You don't know where you can ask for help. And doing that with like Indonesian diaspora refugees, and then also doing that in the organization that I work in, because I do support the career development for the employees, for example, that those are very important for the young entrepreneurs or the tech founders, because it covers all different pipelines of talents that they would like to have. So I supported the ones who are just getting into the company, the ones who are already in the company, and also even the one who are already leading the company and need a fresh perspective.
Well, it sounds like you've kind of embedded yourself into this role really well. And a lot of people talk about reverse mentoring. A lot of people talk about sort of developing the skills for modern workplace and workforce, and you're bringing that voice in. So maybe I can get into a little bit more detail because I'm sure those listening will want to understand how this all happens. And particularly because I know that you're a strong advocate for leadership in the digital era. And you've mentioned that a couple of times now. You mentioned AI, you mentioned TikTok, you mentioned, all of these things that are happening to us. So when you have sort of these discussions, what do those discussions entail? And how do you actually develop those you work with to be the leaders that we need for the modern workplace?
Yes. So I think first of all, we need to kind of define the characteristics, right? Of like what do we even mean with digital era or modern workplace. I have been working in startup, and most startup have a higher degree of flexibility and also trust. Because like right now, like Hey Job is a kind of a hybrid setup. So we do still meet in person, but we also have distributed teams. The startups before Hey Jobs was totally distributed. So that's where the old values of leadership, like, oh yeah, how do we build culture? We need to all go into a team event and have dinner together. Or like, how do we make sure that accountability is there? It's just a very different way to approach leadership. If you cannot see your team because they are distributed, if you have different time zones that you are working with, and if you're also relying a lot on technology for the team to work, because now you don't have whiteboard, you have Miro board, you don't have meeting rooms, you probably have like some kind of a digital space for your team to co-work. And all of this thing, like in my case, thankfully now, in startup, most of the leaders that we have are quite young. They were born with the technology, but still, so they don't have problems with the technicalities of it. But the challenges are sometimes often still in kind of like mindset, trust building, communication. How do I cover all of this? And the way we develop it, is also a bit different. I think when we think of leadership development in the past, it's mm, most of most people think about like, oh yeah, we'll have a 2 to 1 week offsite somewhere else, somewhere nice where we can think about leadership, we can learn a couple of new techniques, and then we go back to organization and we'll be better leader. I mean, we know that it doesn't work now. And then now with the very fast paced work that we have, it's also just not possible to take your leadership away for a week, and so many of them outside. So, and then it's also like, so that like just format wise, it's just different. And then also when it comes to spreading or generating knowledge is also very different. I think in the past, it's easy for someone to say, I know how leadership works, and let me teach you how leadership works. And now nobody really knows how leadership works in this digital era with the distributed teams. Everyone is still figuring it out. So it's hard to design a program where there is this hierarchy of knowledge, like, oh, there is a trainer and then there are trainees or people who need to learn. So we do create a lot of our leadership development program in a hybrid setup or a totally digital setup. That, and then instead of having like 2 3 days of leadership development offsite, we have it spread it all over the quarter, or like have a little bit of here, send a bit of a nudge there, and then have a Q&A session. So it's different format. It's blended experience. That's how we call it sometimes in L&D. And we also try to build more of a community of practice instead of this traditional teacher student setup. So where the key is really to bring leaders together, turn them into a community where they can learn from each other, have a mutual exchanges, and then do problem solving together instead of just trying to follow 10 best practices of how you can build trust in the organization. We rely a lot on conversation and just collective sense making of the workplace.
Well, I'm gonna hold a mirror up to you now, Dinny, because it's really impressive what you're doing with other leaders, with all of the communities, in fact, that you work with. And your work spans, let's just remind everybody who's listening, across tech companies and business, learning and development community, the Indonesian diaspora. But what about you? What have been the most important leadership lessons you've learned in all of these various roles that you're telling us about, in mentoring others and supporting others?
I ask these questions. So when I do reverse mentoring, I was supposed to be the one who mentors, right? So, but I also like sometimes to use the opportunity to ask these very experienced leaders who have climbed their way up, so to say, and who have established themselves as leader in this big corporation. And I asked them, like, what would be the most important leadership lessons you have learned so far that you would like to give to the next generation of leaders? Um, and the first, like, two things that I really remembered from that is have patience. So that's funny because now that's what I give to the startup leaders, tech founders, etc. I think because I am surrounded by younger generations of leaders. We all don't have patience. We all want things to just immediately show results and then immediately grow 10x in the next 1 year. Like, have patience. That has been for me personally a big lesson, because, like, oh yeah, of course I want to achieve all of that before I turn 30. Thank you. And now I learned that sometimes you just need to wait until all the puzzle pieces come together, or there will be the next wave that will help you go further without pushing this wave to move. So patience is one. And the second one that he told me at that time, so this mentee, was interconnectedness. I think that's also, when we talk about leadership in the digital era, um, before, if you are not doing a good job in one company, it probably won't affect you in the next company. If you are treating one employee not the best way that you can, it probably will just stay with him or with HR and nothing more. But now everything else that you do can definitely be publicized. It could just land in the internet. That's one. And everything that you do, it's a very complex system. It's not anymore this very siloed organization. So just be mindful about the decisions that you are doing, that you are taking, as well as, yeah, the how you treat people. Other things that I've learned more from, like, personal observation of the leaders that I work with and the things that I've seen working for them well. I've always found the best leaders are the ones who ask the smartest questions. Um, so not the one who gave you the smartest answer or, like, who knows everything. Uh, I think the best, like, my best leaders, or the best managers that I've had, are the ones who just ask really smart questions. And that can only happen if you listen, if you observe. Um, Whereas, like, answers is more about you and you trying to generate your own knowledge and pass it on to others. Asking smart question invites you to collaboration, invites you to conversation, and the results of what comes out of it is then not only just your own thought, but actually something that you create together. Um, that's one, just asking really smart questions, and they don't make it about them. It's I really enjoyed working with leaders who know why they are leaders, and not just like, oh yeah, I am a manager now because that's what I've always wanted to do, because I wanted to climb the career ladder, or I want to have that title and that. They know they're selfless. They, as I've said, they don't make it about them. Like, I'm here to facilitate, to accelerate, provide you spaces to brainstorm, to solve problem together. So yeah, that's what I try to do, embodying all of these things. Like, have patience, realizing that you are not working alone, so that everything is interconnected. Ask questions more than trying to provide answer. And yeah, don't make it about you. It's very often not about you. And if you just get out of the way of how your team is functioning, it's going to work out better than you trying to put yourself in the center of it.
I love how you describe that, actually. Those who ask the smartest questions, because it really does demonstrate that listening skill, empathy, that ability to observe and reserve judgment rather than, almost not waiting to answer the question and almost interrupting because I've got a great idea for you. It is about them. I like that a lot, and that goes back actually to another point you mentioned in there about being more mindful how we treat people and how we make decisions that might impact ourselves and others. Would you agree?
Yes, yes, definitely. And then that's, you know, I mean, startup is a bubble as well. So that's also where I'm like, I will be working with you again probably at some point, or like I will know someone who works with you, and it's just with everything that we have, social media, it's there's just a lot of platforms where you will meet each other again, and then you will also see the impact that you created down the line, probably not now, but at some point.
Well, it leads me to my final question, which I think some of the learnings that you've had there would represent some great points for what I'm about to ask you, actually, and then reflecting what you've said through the rest of this podcast. If you were to sort of summarize everything, Dinny, into five top pieces of advice that you might give tech founders, let's say, or young leaders that you work with in accelerating their business and personal success, what would they be?
I think I would start with my last point before, is like, know why you want to be a leader. Um, because only like if you figure that out, then it's easier for you to not make it about you. Because if the reason why you want to be a leader is because you want certain title, a certain status, or power, um, then it's probably hard for you to be an effective leader, because that's unfortunately not what we need right now in the modern era. Probably before, when you still need like strong leaders who know everything, who can figure out everything. So I think like that's one. Just like know why you want to be a leader, and what are you serving? Are you serving the team? Are you serving the organization? Or are you serving yourself? Um, Second, I would say, because I work with different, like so many different leaders coming from so many different backgrounds, and it's always like sometimes the questions that I would have is like, which leadership style do I have to emulate? Or like, oh, like what is now the true character of leaders? What does it mean? And for me, especially if I work with Indonesian young leaders who, like a lot of leadership values are very much Western driven or very much male driven. And then this is where I see a lot of leaders coming from minority background struggling a little bit, because like, I'm not sure if my style is the right leadership style. I'm like, and for me, the beauty is you don't need to fit into one style. We will have a very diverse workforce. We will work in a very complex system. If all of us just have one leadership style, or like this is the true leadership qualities that we all need to have, and everyone just pretending to be one type of leader, that's not going to serve the very diverse constituent that you're going to have when it comes to customers, or like your own employees. So for me here, like just like emphasize your strength, like find that unique style of yours and rely on that instead of trying to fit into a certain mold. That's something that I would also sometimes tell myself, because I also struggle a little bit sometimes, like being as I am, working in Germany in a tech branch that's very different than where I'm from. I also struggled with that, and I also have to remind myself that, just embrace my unique style of leadership. And in that third one, like, realize that you are not alone, and ask for help even outside of your organization. For me, when I was hired as the first L&D person in the organization, I thought that I would need to have all the answers, one, and then I don't have anyone in the organization I can brainstorm with, because startup tends to be very lean. So I don't have anyone else that can brainstorm with me about L&D. But this is where I learned, hey, there must be people out there outside of my own bubble that are struggling with the same kind of struggles. And it has been very helpful to also find different leaders in different organizations, different industry even, that can help me brainstorm, or just have a normal exchange. Fourth, stay curious and ask a lot of questions. I mentioned that before. It really opens up the space and invites people to join the conversation and collaborate. And yeah, be patient. I guess that's what I mentioned at the beginning as well. Especially for the ones I'm working with right now, tech leaders, Indonesian leaders who are just trying to make it in the world. Just be patient. As long as you know why you want to be a leader, you're relying more on your strength instead of trying to fit a certain mold. You ask for help when necessary. Try to build your network and ask lots of questions. Even if you don't see results in the next quarter, it will happen at a certain point. And I know if you are young, it's much nicer. Like, I mean, even for me, to be called, oh yeah, 30 under 30, or this and this. Those are all very, very tempting awards to have. But I think it also shows some kind of a sign of maturity, if you know that, it doesn't really matter if you achieve it before 30 or after 40 or whenever, as long as you are working on something that matters.
I like that, and you summarize those again for us, and that knowing why you want to be a leader is a particularly good question to ask first of all, and even for experienced leaders now. Why do you want to be a leader now in this fast-paced era that we're in, etc.? The two that I've ringed and put some crosses on my copious notes that I've made here, Dinny, is embrace the me and my strengths and look outside. You get lots of different perspectives. You've embraced that learning and development community and leadership community outside of your business, and it sounds like that's been a real benefit for you, in not just in bringing ideas in, but for your own development. I'm absolutely sure those tuning in will want to continue the discussion, Dinny, and I have to say thank you so much for sharing and for joining me today. So how do people get in touch, connect with you, and continue that conversation?
It has been also very interesting for me to hear my own thoughts out loud. So thank you so much for the invitation, and for the conversation. How do people get in touch with me? I am quite active on LinkedIn, so that's the easiest place to find me. You can DM me all the time. I reply. Sometimes it takes time, but I do reply to LinkedIn messages, especially when it comes like, hey, let's brainstorm, let's have a discussion, let's work together on certain projects. I'm always open to that. I have my own website, dinyehernanda.com. That's where I put all of my work sometimes, or like articles, or hey, this kind of podcast, wherever I share my thoughts or summarize my own learning. I try to just put it in this one place. But yeah, that's all actually. I have an email address, but that's where you will find me the slowest. So I would say LinkedIn and my own website. That would be the best address to reach out to me.
Well, Dinye Hernanda, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.